Deputy Hart.
Taoiseach, you might have got away with that response to Deputy MacDonald, if you could call it a response, if this was an isolated incidence of mistreatment of whistleblowers. And I note that your confidence in this Minister and the Commissioner are a bit like the time you gave 100% confidence to the last two before it went to zero overnight. Now, exactly 2 years ago this week, I put it to you that a Garda whistleblower in the Midlands region had come forward with serious information regarding Garda involvement in the drugs trade, information which was indisputable. Now, that individual, Nick Keogh, has subsequently been vindicated by an internal Garda inquiry which supported his allegations in that regard. And yet, 2.5 years on, this whistleblower has been out sick for almost a year. He's surviving on just over €200 a week. He's had 5 internal investigations drummed up against him. Medical certificates submitted saying he was out with work-related stress were changed to absence from flu, while the superintendent who stood over all of that is on the promotions list. Now, you were twice approached by a Garda in that division and warned about a senior officer who failed to deal with complaints in that area. And twice since you were approached, that senior officer has been promoted, including being handpicked by the Commissioner for a high-profile job in the Phoenix Park, despite 3 complaints against Garda whistleblowers against him. 4 times one of the Garda whistleblowers wrote directly to your Minister for Justice and told her of the treatment he was experiencing. He made the point that as his colleague in a different region was getting exactly the same treatment, that it couldn't be a coincidence, and it was inconceivable that senior management and the Garda Commissioner would not be aware of it. 19 times myself and Deputy Wallace have raised what has been happening to whistleblowers Nick Keogh and Keith Harrison, who's out 2 years, surviving on a pittance with a young family. His post has been opened. Garda patrol cars cruising down a lane where he lived, 25 kilometres from the nearest Garda station. The HSC called to his kids, all on Commissioner O'Sullivan's watch. So, really, how many examples do you need to be presented to you in terms of the gulf between the public statements of the Commissioner and her private actions in relation to dealing with whistleblowers before you're going to act? Your Minister has had evidence from the O'Higgins Commission. She's had the Section 41 complaint from the civilian head of An Garda Síochána, and most shockingly, she has had the protected disclosure of 2 senior Gardaí outlining systematic, organised, orchestrated campaign to not just discredit a whistleblower, but to annihilate him, with the full involvement of the present and former Commissioner. So what I want to ask to you, Taoiseach, is very simple. What in God's name do you need another investigation for? Is it not patently obvious that it's beyond time for the Commissioner to go?
Taoiseach, 3 minutes.
Well, the question here is in respect of the information received under the Protected Disclosure Act. And that has been received by the Minister for Justice. She has to assess that and appoint a person of competence to deal with it. As I say, whatever is in that documentation either stands up or it doesn't. And in that regard, it is a very serious matter. The powers of GSOC are there for all to see. The Justice has requested that those powers be extended, and the Minister is considering that. And the Independent Police Authority itself has been asked for its views on the treatment of whistleblowers or those within the Gardaí who make disclosures known about wrongdoing or alleged wrongdoing. From that point of view, as I said, whistleblowers should not be in a position and that you outline here for 2 members of the Gardaí. And obviously, if these investigations have been taking place, whether by GSOC or internally, this matter has to be concluded. Whistleblowers have always provided a valuable service in the public interest, and I respect that completely and will defend it. In the case of the most recent document received by the Minister for Justice, we've got to deal with that by appointing a person of ability to go through that documentation and assess whether or not the contents of it stand up or whether they don't. And I expect the Minister will make an announcement about that very soon, Deputy Daly.
Supplementary.
Response, Taoiseach. You tell us that whistleblowers shouldn't be treated poorly and you'll respect and defend that. Well, you must have a different interpretation of respect and defence than I have, because you've been presented with evidence, and your minister has, over a period of 2.5 years, that that has not been the case. You tell us that Taoiseach has the powers, that their powers are there for all to see. Their powers are not there for all to see. Even Taoiseach have said they don't have the powers to deal with this situation. And does it not seem odd to you, Minister or Taoiseach, when you listen to the Commissioner this morning, when she says that the Gardaí is an area where she wants to encourage whistleblowers to come forward, despite all of the evidence that these people have been mistreated? So could you maybe tell me this? If the Commissioner herself is not directly involved in that harassment, do you not have a problem that her authority is so discredited that instructions she has allegedly given for whistleblowers to be protected are being whole-scale ignored across the ranks of An Garda Síochána? Because that is the evidence that is being presented to your minister over a whole period of time. So if you mean what you say, and you really do respect and defend whistleblowers, you'd be answering very differently, because you'd be actually doing something rather than just talking about it.
Taoiseach, 1 minute.
Thanks. Well, in respect of GSOC, obviously, I have absolute confidence in Justice Mary Ellen Ring. She is the chair of GSOC. She has said we need extra powers, and the Minister is considering her request. In respect of the document received under the Protected Disclosure Act by the Taoiseach Minister for Justice, I've already said that she has a duty to examine that and to appoint a person of standing to deal with it. In that sense, I expect the Minister will make her decision known very shortly.